Pretoria. Coming at your stereos. 92.4. Let's go. Metro FM. Your coolest urban radio station. It's where you want to be.
People of Earth, I have an important announcement to make. Listen to me. One that you've been waiting for a long time.
Andile, get away now. Andile, ole para mfana. Andile, arangadi ole para.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everybody doing tonight? I'd like to welcome to the stage
King Andile, Mama.
to everybody in the house. Give a warm round of applause for
King Andile, Mama.
And he captures the moment.
King Andile, Mama.
And it is extraordinary.
Andile batisdala nabo sibari bethu
No awidlale futhi ithini lapha egcineni
batisdala nabo sibari bethu.
What does that mean?
There are many Nigerians in the country, so bashadela ekhaya.
Okay. Sabo
Sbar.
Let's take the calls now. Sbar, please give us a call, Sbar. Let's go to Shola in Randburg.
Hi, Andile.
Yes, Sbar. I hope
We're going to finish you. We're going to suffocate you, Oka.
Grant Kekana speaks on Ronwen Williams.
World-class keeper. I think he should be made the Minister of Finance. He can save South Africa's economy.
We're coming live from Côte d'Ivoire, Abidjan. Sitting with Omar Katugwa as well as Mazola here.
Doing a show with you in person feels very great, especially after Nigeria won the Amapiano battle.
What do you think of Hugo Bruce?
Fantastic manager. I wish we could exchange a manager right now. With the quality of players we have, Hugo Bruce will be blessed.
By the way, this is history. This is Dr. Desjardins' first time on this show in particular. So history's been made, Dr. Desjardins.
You know, when you sign on those bonuses, the journalists that traveled with the team, just think about them in that.
Well, if there's change left, I'll call you.
Sky is the limit, and I know that you can have what you want, be what you want, have what you want, be what you want.
Sports Night Amplified with Andile on Metro FM. Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Game over.
But Patko Mafani is ready on the line. Let's go straight to Patko. Patko, why if Manepila accent to Dumile?
Well, Dumile on a closer Oxford accent, he calls it Oxford accent in Xhosa. I got to know what Xhosa, what Xhosa.
You know, when reprimanding for it's not Ivan Xhosa, go Irvin Xhosa, go Irvin.
Yeah, it's not Ivan Xhosa, it's Irvin Xhosa. You know, when I joined Top Sport, as it was called then, SABC Sport, kukhona abo Trevor Quirk, abo Martin Locke, abo Omden Sitsedi, abo Zama Masonda, abo Timile Mateza, and there was a lighty, you know, learning from all of them. And I remember one of those editorial meetings where we're checking terminologies, and you know, it's a sensitive thing in sport, particularly, you know, the connoisseurs of various sport codes. You cannot make a mistake and call a try rugby and call it a goal, and vice versa. In football, you call it a run or you call it a try. And then there's this guy who unfortunately didn't know Mateza. He was a white old man, and he says, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to understand from Mr. Mateza here. Every time I hear him commentate, he would have this silly thing that he says on air. He says pressure power. So it's like if he's commentating rugby, you will say James Small, pressure power, or Joe Stransky, pressure power. What is this nonsense about pressure power? And the chairman looks at Mateza, and Mateza goes like, no, Mr. Chairman, this chap doesn't understand. It's not pressure power, it's pressure power, meaning over there in Xhosa. It's like, Dr. Kumar, pressure power, Tazale Bolanika. Wellington Manyati, Montu Agalashwa, Peshapea. So it's Peshapea, meaning over there in Xhosa.
And that line became a thing of legend.
Absolutely. And I don't know until when we realize that we need to celebrate our own while they're still alive. Our own walking encyclopedia of sport broadcasting and commentaries is gone. There is no one that would go out of the way, Andile, to research not only about the team or the two teams that he's commentating, but also players, individual players. And he respected his viewers, he respected his listeners, he respected his audience, and so he would make sure that he researches and educates. So for him, the three pillars of the SABC, entertain, inform, and educate. This was in every commentary with Dumile. You would find something to laugh at, you would be informed, you would be educated. And such was Dumile. He was a complete personification of the SABC's mandate of the three pillars. And that was Dumile Mateza for you. But make mistake, you also wouldn't trample on his feet while he's bragging about. I mean, Mateza can be so bragging. He would brag about his knowledge and display it. And if you trampled on his feet and you challenged him and you were not strong at what you were saying, then you would get it. Ask a chap by the name of Brian Murder. If you remember the Olympics, not the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, but the following ones, the 1996 Atlanta Olympics. The semi-final there, let me remind you and the listeners, the semi-final there is Brazil and Nigeria. And there's Brian Mulder. He takes the 8 to 10 first minutes of the match, and he runs and he runs and he runs, and he doesn't give Mateza a chance. I mean, 10 minutes is a lot on air. So Mateza is waiting patiently. But what he does while he is waiting, he keeps noting down and writing everything that Brian Mulder is messing up in his commentary. And when he finally gets to have a chance, just to make sure that Brian Mulder intercept, we better ngesixhosa.
Uthini?
Asiqale silungise yonke le nto ibithethwa apha. Yabona le ndawo sikuyo apha isistadium sikwidolophu encinci lapha kumantla eAtlanta ibizwa ngokuba Stanford. Le ndawo sikuyo ayiso-Stanford, sumamela yonke le nto ithethwa apha. Okwesibini, la mdlali weBrazil onxibe ujezi number 9, igama lakhe nguJuninho, ayingoJazinho. uJazinho wayedlalela iBrazil ngo-1975. Ungamameli yonke le nto ithethwa apha. And this is one thing that Andile and Patko and all other sports broadcasters, like preparation, gents.
Yeah.
Sports Night Amplified with Andile on Metro FM. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Stealing stitches about this. A very good evening and welcome to it. My name is Brian Mufukeng, in for Andile Ngube. It is Sports Night Amplified with Andile. I tell you, let's say thank you very much to the touchdown team. Tibo Touch back himself. I tell you, he was talking about the craziness of coming back into the country. That's why Andile is not here. He's still trying to get back. I don't know whether he said he's going to go Capo Verde. So I think he was stuck between Capo Verde and then Cote d'Ivoire, then coming back to South Africa. Surely will be back tomorrow. There is, I think, Retouch as well as Samoran as well as Lindy in the news and sport respectively. They are back on a touchdown tomorrow, continuing with the action right here. What a tribute. You know, when I joined, today is 100 years.
Yeah.
Since I was celebrating this magnificent day. You know, I remember the first meme I saw on radio. When he started celebrating this day, somebody said radio, all right? Mm-hmm. A platform where ugly people with good voices can get paid. And that just personified me. I was like, okay, that's my job. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. So today we're celebrating 100 years of a medium that most people have said is dying. It's a medium that people are saying younger generation doesn't find interesting anymore. They want to be on telly. They want to be doing their own stuff. But radio remains significant. It is one of those, I mean, when I sit in here and I talk about radio royalty, the mic I'm sitting and I'm broadcasting from, some of the people that graced the space and made sure that we loved radio is joining me in studio today. Some call him the Knoxman. His name is Murio Sanyane. Murio, welcome to the show. Let's start there.
Yeah, thank you very much, Brian. What an introduction, courtesy of Pat Komafani.
Yeah.
What an incredible chap, what an incredible broadcaster.
I got to tell you,
stuff.
Tumila Mateza, when I go to the SABC, I was actually inducted by him as well. I had to go through rigorous training as to how you pronounce, how you prepare, how you do certain things when you come to broadcasting.
Yeah.
And I think there's one thing that he taught me was people will always remember the nickname of a player of anything, but they don't notice his name.
Yeah.
There's always a name that you are born with.
Yeah.
You know, you are a Sanyani before you become a Knoxman.
Yes.
You are a Mufuken before you become any other thing. Anybody will call you outside. So whenever you move away from talking about the player's real name and focus more on a nickname, you are taking away something very significant when it comes to that particular player and the storyline. How you broadcast, how you educate, how you entertain, how you inform. He taught me the booklet, showed me the booklet of how you do that. Yeah, and I still remember the one who used to said he was doing a game and he forgot the player's name. Utata akina una butchery.
Of Bushbucks, Umtata Bushbucks.
Let's talk about this, Jenny. I mean, a lot of people know you now as Mrio Sanyani. It's for those that joined radio very late or that never really followed your career. You were once sitting here. You were once a broadcaster in this platform. But let's take it back. Where did it all start for you to eventually land sitting here as a broadcaster before you move on to communication? And I know you're also doing other stuff now.
Well, I think, Brian, it started many years ago, growing up in Mabopane, Block B, listening to all different radio stations under the auspices of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Very interesting that at a very young age, I criticized the content that was coming out of the SABC. I was not a trained journalist. I never knew what journalism was about. I was just a young man from the rural area of Pake coming to Mabopane, listening to radio but not getting something that inspires me.
Yeah.
Which was a very interesting thing when I reflect on it. Listen to different radio stations, Radio Lebo at the time and so on. But I got to realize later as to why it was that. Because of the policies of the National Party government.
Yeah.
Because at the time, there was no private radio stations and so on. It was only the public broadcaster, which was wholly controlled. It was not even a public broadcaster. Let's be correct. It was a state broadcaster at the time.
Yep.
Wholly controlled by the National Party government. And every piece of information that got out of those microphones and speakers and so on, it was curated to promote a certain narrative.
Yeah.
And that narrative was about Azanian People Organization are terrorists. The African National Congress are terrorists. The Pan-Africanist Congress are terrorists. Anything to do with politics, you've got terrorism, and these people must be apprehended. So I think the propaganda that was churned out at that particular time made me not to enjoy radio. But at that time, one thing that at least I enjoyed, it was what you call the story, dramas.
Oh, yes.
We grew up on that. We grew up on that. At least that is something that one could identify with, in terms of the messaging behind, the side effects in the background, and so on and so forth. And the reason why it was important and we could identify with it, Bruno, is because our grandparents, our fathers, our uncles were narrating these stories, different stories to us.
Yeah.
And we'll find that the story that your grandfather, your grandmother narrated to you, it's now being played out on radio. So that was the most important. So that was the most important thing. And when coming to music, for instance, growing up in a township, because of the versatility of people within townships, even if you didn't do the mechanical engineering, but guys will fix a car for you.
Yes.
That's the culture of townships. The music that was coming out of radio, it was nice. But then there was music that we were listening in Shebins, in our brothers, jazz music, soul music, reggae music, and so on, that you couldn't hear on SABC radio. We later find out that it was part of the censorship policy of the National Party government, that music that inspire black people, music that talk about human rights, music, anything that says I'm young, gifted, and black, anything that says I'm black and proud, it was banned by the SABC.
Yeah.
And not banned in a sense that don't just play it. Those records were literally scratched. So when I first joined the SABC in 1998, after I even tried for about 15 years, I couldn't get it. The first thing I did was to go to the library in SABC to go and see, is it true that they were scratching those records? And of course, you went there, they were scratched and so on. So radio has Has a very strong, powerful history.
Just so that the younger generation, Malcolm, doesn't know a record. He knows a vinyl. So just to make sure that is the old LP.
You say
old LP.
Yeah, it's
so
a vinyl.
Vinyl. But the vinyl is actually doesn't get scratched easier. It's got that nice layer surface. The old one, once scratched, is done.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything about it. You see, when you talk about CDs, Malcolm, I need to bring it home to Malcolm.
Exactly.
Talk about CD. A CD, you scratch a CD. Try and put it in water to try and clean it. But if the scratch is too deep, you can't play that. So that's what they used to do with the records. Yeah. So now at least we're at level, Malcolm.
Yeah. Not true. Yeah, I think, Bruno, that's basically the power of radio and so on and so forth. But I think what changed and influenced me somehow was what we can call unintended consequences. Because the National Party government started creating homelands.
Yeah.
Okay? They said, okay, we support apartheid, but because you say you want to be free, you don't belong in South Africa. You're coming from the Bantu stance. Botswana, we give you your own homeland called Bophuthatswana.
Yes. There was Transkei,
Transkei, the Xhosas. You've got Transkei there, Matanzima, Ciskei, Upaqozo, Bophuthatswana, Mangop, and so on and so forth, to say, go back to your homelands and so on. But this unintended consequences I'm talking about, it's what Lucas Mangope of Bophuthatswana did.
Yeah.
He transformed a whole lot of things. He brought in what you call Radio Bob. My goodness, Brian.
The station with a mind of its own.
The station with a mind of its own.
Yeah.
We started listening to reggae, Peter Tosh, apartheid song. Started listening to Fela Kuti, Mashakara. You start listening to all sorts of things, band songs and whatever, topics that were Hugh Masekela. We couldn't play, SABC couldn't play Hugh Masekela, couldn't play Kefa Semenya, they couldn't play Letambulu. So Radio Bob brought all those things back, including such conversation. So I think that's when one started to say, now I know what radio is. That's how it started, the seed being planted into me. And I don't know how many demos that I've sent to Radio Bob, application letters, and so on and so forth. But that dynamic of Mangope, and by the way, they were trying to say to him, why do you do these things and whatever? Don't do that. And he says, but I'm independent.
I can do what I want.
I can do what I want. And from there, he brought in Radio Mabatu, which was a Swana thing. There was a program called Muribo wa Africa by the guy called, may soul rest in peace, Mohale Mafatsi.
Yes.
Purely African sounds. From the African continent to the diaspora, the Bob Marleys, the Toots and the Maytals, the Rita Marleys. I mean, it was just an incredible songs coming out of Botswana, Tanzania, Cameroon, and so on and so forth, called Muribo wa Africa. That's when Brian started saying, this is what I've been longing for. And I wanted, just start making demo tapes with cassettes. Don't know if, is it Malcolm Martin?
No, Malcolm doesn't do cassettes.
So Malcolm, so I don't know if you know cassettes, but started doing demo tapes, sending them to Radio Mala, to send them to Radio Bob, thinking that you can broadcast and do all kind of things and stuff. So I was just answering to say, where did it all start in terms of the passion? So I was giving you that context.
Were you always a radio person, or did you have another profession before you got into radio?
Football has been my my passion. I've always wanted to be to be a football coach. I coached at a very young age.
Yes.
I was the youngest coach at the Bophuthatswana Professional Soccer League because at school I was playing under 19, at high school, but coaching the senior team. Youngest coach in Bobsol. Mangope, the way he was so progressive. I mean, I'm talking about the 80s.
Yeah.
He had brought in. When he established the Bophuthatswana Professional Soccer League, he had brought in a guy to become a director of coaching.
Wow.
So Bill McGarry. So I started working with Bill McGarry in coaching in schools and community clubs and so on to assist him. So football was like my vision, my dream. But radio, I remember knocking on Koos Gadebe's door, having walked from Hillbrow, working from Hillbrow. I was staying in High Point. From Hillbrow coming to
High Point was the place.
I was staying in High Point. I was living in High Point.
So you're living large, my guy.
Football guys were paying for my flight.
You're living large. High Point was the place.
Football people were paying.
I grew up partly in Central Louisjaba, but I spent my time mostly in Mayfair.
Yeah.
So when you went to High Point, you really went to High Point. That was the highest point. You knew you are now royalty when you got to High Point.
Because I coached a team here called City Hospice.
Yes.
So they were paying for my flat. They were, you know,
no,
they
okay. You see the bragging rights are coming out now. Somebody paid for him to stay in High Point. Now, so how do you transition then from being a coach to being a person who's into football purely, who loves music, to eventually find yourself sitting behind the mic doing sport?
Sure.
On radio.
You know, Brian, I got to be honest with you. The assassination of Chris Hani.
Yes.
That changed my life completely. When Chris Hani was assassinated, something in me died. Because he was one of my favorite politicians in terms of when you listen to Mandela speak, when you listen to Zef Mutupeng speak of PSC, when you listen to all these political speeches. But when Chris Tembisile Hani spoke, Brian, there was just something about that man.
Yeah.
When Janus Walus and his cronies, Clive W. Lewis and all those guys, killed him in cold blood while he was joking, and he entered his house in the Don Park, Boxbeck, something died in me. And I needed something to heal, okay?
Yeah.
Because I attended every... Brian, I remember, you know, they said there will be a memorial service at Smith Street, this church in Smith Street, Methodist Church.
Methodist Church,
in Smith Street. And I mean, hundreds and thousands of people attend there. And we said, no, we can't attend. Hillbrow was shut down. We toyed from Twist Street coming up here, whatever. We ended up at High Point. And I remember some guys trying to instigate people to loot.
Yeah.
What? I remember Hope Babu, who's now an MP of the ANC.
Yeah.
You know, we lift him up. He was on like a dustbin or something, and he started addressing that crowd. He says, not in the name of Chris Hani, not in the name of the African National Congress. No shops are going to be looted here. And he says, discipline. And I respected Hope Babu for that, and we dispersed. Brian, I went to the night vigil of Chris Hani, slept at FNB Stadium. And when we were going to bury him in the morning, I mean, his body lied in state for the whole night.
Yeah.
We're filing to see this man. You know, we toyed Razabalas the whole night and whatever. In the morning, the buses were full. People were on top of the buses going to Don Park. And I remember I was with George Lamula, the actor, the veteran.
Yeah.
We said, no, we can't. So we walked back from FNB Stadium. There was no transport, it was just standstill. We walked back from FNB Stadium to Hillbrow. And from there on, that's when I said, I need to do something that will make a difference in people's life. Chris Hani won't die for nothing. That's when I decided I'm going to study journalism.
Yeah.
And that's why my type of journalism, wherever I do, sports, politics, is activist journalism. I don't do journalism to become a celebrity.
Yeah.
I do journalism to impact on communities, to change people's lives, like we did during Metro days.
Yeah.
The establishment of the South African Football Players Union.
Yeah.
Because they needed support. And I took a conscious decision and engaged the station manager, Romeo Khumalo, at the time.
Yeah.
I said, we've got and I must appreciate the management style of Romeo Khumalo. But when he recruited me from Kaya to come and join Metro FM, we agreed on few things. The editorial independence. You don't mix with the editorial independence. It lies with me because you're appointing me as the sports editor, okay? You don't interview. Romeo never, for the close to 5 years that I spent here with Robert Marawa, Romeo never intervened. People tried to force them. They said that they must fire me because I'm making all those kind of things. Romeo stood firm and supported me. So the reason why I joined journalism, it came from deep. It's not about being behind the mic and playing things. Yeah. It's about influencing, and always I'm thinking of Chris Hani.
You know, you're mentioning something very interesting. I mean, not a lot of people know that we worked with Robert Marawa here. You know, I remember there used to be days. You do certain days before eventually transition happened. But you got in trouble as well. when we were here.
Lots of trouble.
A lot of trouble because of some of the controversial stuff, you would say. But holistic, when you look at it, it was a journalistic thing where you spoke, where some people thought you spoke out of chin. You're not really following the script. How did you navigate that? Because, and are we still seeing that now, or have we lost all of that?
Look, firstly, it starts with journalism training.
Yeah.
Okay, it starts with journalism training, 3 years of journalism, but also getting people to mentor you. And before I came to Metro, even to Kaya, I was fortunate to work at 702 Talk Radio.
Yeah.
But the person that I hang on to, it was John Koilani, may so rest in peace, JQ.
Yeah.
Did you hear the controversy of that man? And at that time, South Africa was in a transition, okay? Yeah. We were in a transition from apartheid into democracy. And the racists in this country, when they were taking JQ, but because he was solid, he had an institutional memory, he was strong, he tackled them head on. So I even forced that I should become a call screener and producer of Talk at 9 at 702 because of my understanding of JQ's journalism. Agri-cluster, may his soul rest in peace. The concept of nation building, Brian, through the Soweto newspaper. Today, I'm talking about nation building. I'm using that concept of Dr. Agri-cluster then. So that's how I positioned my journalism. And when I spoke to Romy about the issues of editorial independence and so on and so forth, but Brian, it takes responsibility as well.
Yeah.
What I did, there was a head of legal here at SABC, which I formed a closer relationship with. Because it's important, we are regulated, we've got all these kind of things. There's media law in journalism, but some things that needs legal opinion. So I'll always go upstairs because the show was controversial, like you say. But I'll go to the head of to the head of.
I know that controversy. Yeah. You brought plenty of it.
But I brought current affairs into sports, which never existed.
Yes.
I brought current affairs into sports, which never existed. So even for Romeo to agree that we must have sports for 5 days, Monday to Friday, because I said that's what we need. So I got the best support from my manager, Romeo. So in terms of dealing with that legal thing, I'll always go to the head of legal here at the SABC.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss. And I'll say, the PSL are this, or SARFU this, that, and then. And they said we mustn't broadcast. And then he will say, legally, you're good, so you can go. Yeah.
Can join the conversation. We are celebrating World Radio Day today and joined in studio by Murio Sanyane, as well as shortly we'll bring another man. I know most of you who are coming, who literally just grew up with the 2000s, will know him as a romantic man, romantic rapporteur. We talk about on Radio 2000 is a show he does. What's the name of the show, by the way? I'll remember now because I'm always there. Retrospective. Retrospective. That is Braik. We'll talk to him in a bit as well. Join the conversation 060 552 73003. That is 060 552 7303. That is the WhatsApp number or studio number 086 000 2160. You can join the conversation. Let's now bring in Braik. Retrospective is the show, Braik. Again.
It is the show, Bruno. Good afternoon to you, and happy World Radio Day, and good afternoon to Maria.
Sure, Braik, how's it?
All right, how are you, Maria?
All good.
Yeah. Braik, you know, there's something I never told you before, and this is, I only share these things when you get special moments like this. When I was growing up in Mayfair, you used to do the mid-morning show between 9 and 12 on Metro. And I won a hamper. My first CDs I own, Rio. I won from his show. He sent me 5, a pack of 5 there. I don't remember, but they used to call it where you used to select songs, and the songs will be played, and then they'll select the best, and then you'll get you'll get a prize.
The compilation.
It was called Choose and Breeze.
See, and I was still a young lad then when I actually did that, and I won that. And I remember immediately after that, I won another hamper, but I think it was either on his show or on Grand Chakwa's show on the weekend when Michael Jackson came into the country. I won 2 VIP tickets to go and watch the show.
Yo.
So that's, but I was still a young man. I didn't understand the dynamics around it.
Yeah.
Braik, everybody who knows you know you as a music guy, because that's what some of us, when you started listening to radio, you were doing music, and that's why we have known you to be the romantic man that brings out the best songs. And I mean, fine, I call you the deliverer of fine music, because you bring something that not everybody else listens or plays on radio. But let's talk about your journey in radio. Where did it all start for you?
Well, thank you very much again, Bruno. Well, the career started at Metro in 1991. And it was interesting because I had met Koos Hadebe at the School of Broadcasting. That school was run by a man called Malcolm Russell, who was a legend himself when it came to radio. And I got some of the best training. People like Dorian Berry, she was the television queen. We also had Charlotte Levine, who was at Radio 5. We had Stan Katz, who was at 702. And the man himself, Koos Hadebe, who was managing Radio Metro as we knew it then. Now it's Metro FM. And he offered me a stint as a newsreader. And shortly after that, I graduated. We did graveyard shift to train yourself, because it's a one-man studio. So I didn't know anything about the buttons that were there. It's like a cockpit. So I trained for about 3 weeks on the night, and then I did the Sunday show between 3 and 6. It was also for a very short stint until I was given an opportunity to present the 9 to 12, which was the mid-morning brief, and which I did for quite some time. And it was the first time that a male was doing that on black radio, black English radio at the time. And I think the only second person who's doing it is the current presenter of that show between 9 and 12 on Metro FM. So it was a very interesting period in my life. And because there were so many opportunities, I also did sports commentating for the station. I did soccer, I did boxing, I did athletics. And you remember in the 90s, South Africa was still the darling of the world. We were invited to several places. We went to France. We went to play Australia. We traveled quite extensively throughout Africa because we were being invited with Bafana Bafana. So it was really eye-opening for me, and I learned quite a lot also from the African language stations, surprisingly enough, when it came to the issue of commentating on matches and the other sports.
Let's talk about this. I mean, who are those role models that you aligned yourself with, those that you looked up to and said, this is the path I need to go when you come to the sports side of things?
Well, Thabo Kofa is still there. He's an award-winning broadcaster.
Mr. Cool.
He was one of the people that held my hand when we went through there, and also transitioned to television. When Dennis Teddy, the late, also held my hand. So I was in good company, and I was climbing on the shoulders of giants when it came to that. And I think it's invaluable what they imparted onto me. And I think, sadly, that's what we're missing currently in terms of mentorship and being able to learn from others that came to us.
When you look at, you do athletics way back in the days in the 90s during segregation. How was it, for you to still be able to fulfill and be able to do your job when we are not part of the bigger world at that stage? Because we're just getting invited, but we're not as big as other countries were at that stage.
I think the world was opening up and realizing the talent that existed on the southern part of the continent. And we were, everywhere we went, it was very heartwarming because people would always wish you, oh, you're from South Africa. We wish you the best with your future going forward. And every one of us would go there and feel very proud because our guys, though they had not been in international sports fraternity for quite some time, but they held their own. Although we would get embarrassed now and again when it came to soccer, we would be beaten. the strengths, the tactics that people who were much more advanced, especially in Australia, we got beaten quite a lot, but we learned a lot from there. Yeah. And that is why in 1996 they made us proud and brought the Africa Cup of Nations home.
When you look at now, I'm going to bring you for this one, Rio. I mean, let's talk about social media. How much of a role is social? Because if you look at we got more access to stuff. How was preparation done way back in the days versus now, because of the amount of sharing that's happening? And then how difficult was it for you to narrate and tell a story way back then, if you compare the two, how things have been done now?
Yeah, well, you see the impact of social media, but if you cast your mind back, Braik, there was an era of postcards, okay, where radio presenters were receiving postcards.
Okay.
Just like now we get into Twitter, we get WhatsApp. Okay. So there were postcards. And there was an era where there were also letters that were written to presenters, greetings.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, the people, and especially after Radio Bob and Radio Mabat were formed, because they took radio by storm.
Yeah.
They took radio by storm. And there were people that will thought they were celebrities because they were forever. Their postcards were forever read. Their letters were forever read.
Oh,
I still know some of their names. People like Ace Mabagani. I mean, I don't know it, but because always he'll greet this guy and there's another one, Elton John Sasibula. You know, so that interaction, even in those old days, in terms of radio and so on, research is quite important. Somehow, because of the advent of internet, Brian, you can go on into the internet before the Google. You go into the internet, you check. But my research, it was with discussing with people.
Yeah.
Because there's some information that we'll never find on the internet.
That's what Pratkabo called the Ungoogleable.
Yeah. So I will sit with the legends. Yeah. I will we'll talk stories and so on, and I'll ask them questions and so on and so forth. Obviously, you need to make that conscious decision because some of the stuff you can't find it here.
You're giving away some of the secrets, That's what I do in the background. So now, let's continue. It's okay.
Yeah. So for me, that's how I did that. But just reading, because you're being given the responsibility. Every time you join a radio, they'll tell you that, radio has a mandate of informing, educating, and entertaining.
Yeah.
And Brian, throughout my radio broadcast, I refused to say those words. That radio entertains, educate. No, I don't do that because it's a huge responsibility. Other people can say it. Other people can. And to say I'm here to educate you or to inform you, no. I just do my job to the best of my ability, and the listener will decide whether he or she's informed, she's educated, or entertained. But I don't say those particular words because I think the responsibility is quite massive. Before, maybe because radio we're working on time. I know we spoke about Dumile Mateza because we're talking about how people used to do research and all those kind of things, and you spoke about nicknames and that.
Yeah.
And I mean, you listen to the likes of Tlapani Masitanyane, for instance. There was a guy called Dan Mungale in Radio Setswana then, Motsweding. My goodness me. You will think that you're watching the game on television. The theater of the mind comes strongly in terms of their commentary, which was something that was quite major. And that's why, through the power of radio, you still find some people, Brian. I know you're commentating on television. Some people switch off the TV volume and listen for commentary on radio.
No, I'm back on radio. I'm back to radio.
Welcome back home. No, welcome back home. This is the best thing. But the other issue is the power of radio through giving people identities.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past, you have a guy like William Makura of Moroga Swallows. They used to call him "Squeeze Me, Baby."
Yeah.
And it is the commentators.
Yeah.
And when he holds that ball in the middle of the park for Maswai Swai, and they say "Squeeze Me, Baby," you've got We Miss You Manelo.
Yeah.
Rapelejo, know. Then you've got Teenage Ladder at the time in Kabated, You've got Mabega Panzi Ace in Tsuleng. And you see him looking down but the pass that's gonna, And it was these commentators who were giving these guys all these incredible names that today we still call them by, whether they've passed on or not, it still remains.
Brian, let me bring you into this conversation also about, how radio has transitioned from the days when you started to now. And if you were to choose between the two medium, TV or radio, which would be your favorite and why?
Well, radio always comes first. And I've had a lot of offers for television gigs.
Yeah.
And I would turn it down. And I'll tell you why, Brian, because you have too many bosses on television. The camera itself is your boss. You always have to focus on the camera.
Yeah.
You have the earpiece. You have the producer that's also screaming instructions to other people. So, and you also have the person who is in the studio.
Yeah.
That's also pointing you to all those cameras. So there was too many things that are happening at the time. And the clock also is also your boss. So there's too many bosses there. While with radio, you do plan. This is what you work ahead.
Yeah.
This is what's going to happen after the break, this and this and this and this, and you are in control of the situation. While with television, you are not. And just to go back to what Maria was saying about research and talking to people, remember that huge responsibility that you also alluded to is the fact that people don't have access to some of the personalities that you are there, and they would love to ask some questions.
Yeah.
And it's always best to get people to maybe write in and to also ask you to pass on those questions.
Yeah.
So it's all about not being about yourself. It's about asking about other people. I'll tell you a funny story. Brawadi Serote, we met him, and he gave me a book of his, which I read, and he knew that I had read the book. But because I was going to interview him, I have to pretend as if I haven't read the book, because I want him to tell the story by himself. And at some stage, he was reluctant to answer some of the questions, so we had to go for a break. And I told him, Brawadi, I have read the book, but I'm asking you this question on behalf of the nation, because those are the people that are listening. So it's dynamic in that way that even if you know something, it shouldn't be about yourself. It should be about the listeners who have tuned in.
Your message to a young kid growing up in anywhere in this country, whether you're talking from Gamolepo, talking about that one that come from Kraaifontein, who's is in doubt of why they want to join this medium, because podcast has become the big thing. Social media is taking over. What is your message to them if they're thinking of going to this career? What are the things they need to look out for?
The basics. The radio is not about you. It's about what you want to impart to people in terms of the content that you want to create. And also, I find that these days a person would ask you a question and put an answer in that, and the response is going to be very limited. If you are limited with your questions, you're going to get as much as you can out of the subject that you are interviewing and out of the subject matter. And it's just about the basics of being a good listener, being able to follow up on questions. We know that producers will most likely would love us to follow the questions that they are asking. But if you listen as well and discuss the angle of the story or of the interview,
indeed,
it's important for you to listen to people.
Right. If you were to advise a younger you, how would you do things the same way, or would you change something in your route?
I wouldn't change anything. I think we had the freedom when we started, and it's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, that we compiled the shows and we put in the PRS. We put in the PRS form, so it became much more personal.
Yeah.
But also, we would follow the instructions of the program manager. Your link between tunes or between the songs is going to be about 20 or 30 seconds at the most. And that is what we used to do. It's music station. It's not something that you fight over air. I mean, it's possibly for some people it works. The zoo format that we have these days, where you have 3 people that are busy interacting with one another. But when they start, you find that if they don't gel that much, it creates a lot of confusion. We used to have 3 people. Maria will attest to that. You would have your sports anchor, you would have your news anchor, and in some instances you would have somebody doing the weather. But we knew that there was a main anchor, and you know your time of when to come in, to chip in, and to do your stint for about 3 or 4 minutes, and you're out of there. If they seek your comment on something, you offer that comment, but it's not your show. And that's the other big important thing, Bruno. If you are given a responsibility to do a show between 6 and 7, you took over from somebody, and somebody is going to have to take over.
Right, we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you very much. Let's pay some bills. Come back, more than conversation.
Once upon a time, there was a little boy who battled with never-ending infections. It was always the same story. School, runny nose, fever, doctor. School, runny nose, fever, doctor. Until one day, his mother gave him Septiguard syrup. With ingredients sourced from nature and enhanced by science, Septiguard quickly put an end to the nasty infections. Septiguard Natural Antibiotic Syrup. Your first line of defense against everyday infections.
Meet Thomas Magolagaubona, the man who only believes what he's seen with his very own eyes. That's until the day he walked into Burger King and saw the King Combo 1 deal. Eh? Why, yeah. Since then, Thomas Magolagaubona changed his name to Thomas. Magolagaubona, everything except price at Burger King King Size Combo 1 meal that comes with 2 cheeseburgers, medium chips, and a cold drink for only $60. Mahlangu.
Burger King King Size Combo deals. So unbelievably affordable. You have to eat it to believe it.
Visit betway.co.za and never miss out on the non-stop action. Get way more with Betway.
A big weekend for the big boys. City, Arsenal as well, Liverpool, all winning comfortably, and Ivory Coast becoming kings of the African continent. Don't forget, Betway's Top Up Tuesday promotion, where you get more when you top up your Betway account this Tuesday. Stay tuned to betway.co.za and to see what exciting things they have in store for you this week. The action never stops with Betway.
Visit betway.co.za to bet on every unforgettable sporting moment. Get way more with Betway.
Metro FM. Yeah, it's where you want to be.
It is indeed where you want to be. 7 minutes before we get to 7 o'clock, where Faith Mangupe is standing by with Metro FM Talk. It's coming up. Interesting conversation she had last night. But we're still in conversation with a 2 legend of this station, Metro FM. Maria Sanyani joining us in studio, and also on the line, we do have Ike Patla. Ike, you were just summing up something very important around how the synergy work in studio. When I was taught radio, I was told that it's one link, one thought.
Absolutely, and that's why I say people should go back to the basics of doing that and following that. You know, the format of the show is important, and you always want to keep to it, and so that if somebody is not around, look, you handling this, Andile is not around, but it doesn't feel any different because of the content and the format of the program.
Thank you,
so
sir.
It's quite important to establish that format.
Brian, thank you very much. We'll catch you again on Radio 2000. Retrospective, I know that you got, Mario, it was like you beat some music over Pala. Expensive sound. Are we
Yeah, no.
No, you realize there was thought process.
The music with soul.
Yeah, the way the songs were lined up.
Exactly.
And the back announcing, I learn every day. When I go on air after him or before him, goosebumps every day. Thank you very much for making me love radio, Brian. That was Ike Patla there joining us and every conversation to celebrate this moment. Mario, Brian mentioned something very important. When you got back into the international frame, we were called the 4x4 boys. So let's talk about that stage when we got back into national football as Bafana. You were part of that synergy before you made a transition to become part of the communication department of SAF. And how did that happen?
Yeah, Brian, I think what really This is a controversial subject, and it needs an hour, and I'm not going to do justice to this thing.
Okay, let's get a summary of it.
Let's look. Firstly, in 1976, when we beat Argentina 5-0 at Rand Stadium, it was not a fluke. You look at that team. Abednego, Valdez is coming, Jesus is coming, Shagangogo.
Yeah.
Malombo Lechaba.
Yeah.
Pule Asinsoleng.
Yeah.
Wester City Lady Chaba. Jomosono, Concord, Matilele. I mean, you look at that team, you look at the goals that were scored, 1976. Look at the skills. Then we import coaches from Europe, and they tell us that we are playing Mickey Mouse football. Okay?
Yeah.
They change our style of football. Even Joe Frickleton, the Scottish man, he tells Teenage Gladler that you're too light. You must start picking up irons so that you must be big and bulky. Now you want to reduce the pace of Teenage Gladler, the agility, the speed.
Yeah.
You want to reduce it and then turn him into a robot. Heel extension Shando Mukari. We call him heel extension because he will pass the ball anywhere without looking, knowing the sense to say, where's Brian? With the back heel. Coach Eddie Louis Maysol, rest in peace, he argued that he mustn't do those things. But he says, but the ball has gone to the person.
Yeah.
That element of surprise in football is quite important. And that's what makes people like Messi, Ronaldo, multimillionaires. But we brought in coaches from Europe and they destroyed that. And we are battling. Brazil, Brian, will never win the World Cup again, trust me. Because all the players they're playing in European football. They have decimated what Brazilian football it is all about. Trust me, they will never win the World Cup again. But finally, I want to talk about the most important advent of radio. That is community radio, Brian. That came with democracy. Because I'll talk about the history of radio.
Yeah.
When we opened up, the democratic space, private licenses to stations like Kaya, Power, and all those kind of things. But it started with community radio. And that's where some of us started as well. After getting failed to get, we started at radio. We turned our campus radio into a community radio station. Because we were doing journalism, some of us started introducing talk radio because people were just interested in music and all. But we says, let's balance it out with talk and so on.
Yeah.
And as they say, the rest is history. We produced some of the fantastic presenters. I remember also recruiting Fana Kabzela Kaba, bringing him to Metro FM.
Oh yeah.
It was such a great pleasure. He never got a chance to go on air. When YFM recruited him, came to me and said, "Hey Mario, YFM wants me, and I know you brought me to Metro." I said, "Romeo is delaying you by going on air. Go to YFM and show them something."
And he changed.
The Alexa of the airwaves, Kabzela, Fana Kaba.
No,
he kicked ass.
He changed radio.
I mean, he changed the radio. So there's a lot of talent that came from community radio, and I hope and wish that we should invest more resources into that.
I tell you, I mean, Fana Kaba, Kabzela, I came from the same radio station where he was at first.
Soweto Radio.
But I arrived just when Josie was formed. Yeah. And I was only there for about 6 months before I was moved, and somebody got me to be at the SABC. The story you mentioned about going to Radio Bob, not getting a gig. Tell you what, I was doing a retail radio when Bob had me. And Bob took me to Bob. I signed for Bob the Monday radio SABC closed Radio Bob. So it's a story I don't want to talk about because it always breaks my heart when I realize I could have been there. Never happened, and eventually I found myself here. But I'm sitting here in a mic at different place in Rita. Coming up in a bit, you got Faith Mangupe taking over the airwave. Rio, you saw Bafana get bronze medal. Yeah. How did it make you feel, just to sum it up?
I never expected them to go there.
Okay.
I was taken by a big surprise. I didn't expect them to make it to the semi-final. Faith Mangopes, yeah?
I know. It's
how are you, Goddess?
What do you got to say? This reunion.
How are you, Goddess?
Reunion.
What did I say to you during your farewell? Say, I'll see you soon.
You did say you'll see me soon.
And go out there and make a difference to the nation, because that's why we're here. And I'm getting positive feedback, which is good. So you listen. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
You
don't understand,
do you know he's coming in today?
No, I had no idea. So I was listening on my way to work, and as he was articulating his life and the death of Chris Hani, I listened. and everything was saying, right? Yeah. And I just thought to myself, oh my goodness me, it's like it's. Do you know what he feels like? And I do not, and I mean this. There's so few people that you encounter in this business.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've been in this business, the radio business, for 17 years. And there are certain people that you encounter who feel like home. And Morio feels like home. Well, to me, he feels like it's like I'm at home. So when I'm like this, it's like it's a feeling of home and familiarity, and I often associate home with safety.
Yeah.
So I'm in a very good space of safety and home, which means that I can say whatever it is that I want because I've got my two people. No, but it is.
Wow.
It's such a blessing. He literally is. He's like home. He feels like home. He's the personification of home, and only because I really have been groomed by the best in the business. And I'm saying this in absolute humility. My radio career has been groomed, and I've had the privilege and the honor of watching people who have really trailblazed the sector of industry for me to come in and be able to set myself apart as a broadcaster who happens to be female.
You say something very profound, because I remember when I joined the SABC and I came from music background, eventually found myself doing sports. He was head of communication at SAFA. The funniest thing is that I would give him a call and say, I would like to come in camp. I want to do profiling for the players, which most people want the pack. I wanted to do one-on-ones with players to actually get bigger background story. And I did my first gig. I did my first TV gig. It was him and Munna Khudla. The first call I got was for the two of them to say, this is something we need. It's a different storytelling on telly or radio, where you're therefore linking the people, humanizing the players, as opposed to just being objects. You're humanizing them, and that is the path you need to take. The late Manyapir, may soul rest in peace, said the same thing. And that is what have brought me to be where I am today. I want to thank you for that.
Thank you
for always supporting and always understanding why we are doing this. And Faith, I listened last night, and I was sitting and telling myself, I do not want to be interviewed by Faith.
Because that's what he said. I was listening to Faith last night. Phew.
I went like, you know what?
Yeah, Maria knows. Maria knows. As soon as sometimes he'd come into the studio, he'd go,
I know.
Really?
I know myself. Okay. So when you start finding somebody on being interviewed and is unable to unpack their same subject they've been asked questions about. What's up? What's coming up today?
Well, accountability once again.
Hang on a second before that.
Yes.
Okay, let me just abuse the platform.
Oh, yeah.
Faith got into breakfast radio at a difficult time of COVID-19. Phew. Remember the conversations we used to have?
We did.
The approach, the most difficult period, because it has never happened in the history of the world. COVID-19.
Where everybody's at home.
Yeah.
And everybody's judging you.
And people are dying, Brian.
Yeah.
And people are dying, people are sick.
Yeah.
Jobs are lost, and we have to come into the radio first thing in the morning and address thousands and thousands
with
of people.
the late Bob Mabena.
Yeah.
And then I had to be on air the day after Bob Mabena passed away. So I understand this radio business. I've been groomed by the base.
You're paid of dues.
Yeah, I paid my dues in this radio business. But lots in store for us this evening. We're in conversation with Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mkhunu regarding just the progress that they've undertaken really to tackle some of the challenges, particularly in eThekwini. We're also going to be looking at some areas in Tshwane, especially when it comes to this latest report saying that we've got grants that have been awarded. As you would know, that municipalities get given grants by National Treasury.
Yeah.
Some of these grants are going back to Treasury and they're not being utilized when they're supposed to be actually going towards the maintenance of infrastructure. So we're going to be really questioning around that particular one as well with the minister. And then obviously, as we're continuing to acknowledge World Radio Day, we're going to be looking at how to maintain objectivity in the subject that we're discussing, and more than anything else, how to further, and what does the future of radio look like in the country.
Yeah.
So that's another conversation. We're in conversation with Sanef as well as the Director of Media Monitoring Africa. After 8, you want to pay attention to this one. It's going to be deep, it's going to be emotional, it's going to be exposing a little bit. But today we're talking about gambling, the things that we don't want to talk about it most of the time. And I think a lot more people, especially young people, are into online gambling because I can't track it and I don't know that you're an online gambler, and you can be addicted without me knowing. So today we're talking about gambling. We're talking about online gambling. We're talking about the impact of online gambling, and especially when it comes to generations who lose. It's 5 Ranyana here, it's 2 Ranyana here. But if you do it every single day, what does that make you? It makes you an addict. But what is the impact on that, on your livelihood, on the people around you, and how do we ask for help?
Very much for that one there. That's how we come to the end of the Sports Night Amplified rather with Andile. Faith Mangope is coming up shortly. As thank you very much. We took time. Mario, you mustn't come to studio anymore because look at it. We're already taking 5 minutes of Faith's time. My apologies. Andile is back tomorrow.
It's a special day.
On your radio tomorrow. Timmy Miranda's the man in charge. I see the producer looking at me and he's like, yeah, what's our gang? These guys I'm going to chase out of the studio one day. Andile is back tomorrow on the radio station. Then Tabonkwala. Malcolm also making sure everything was good, and all my guests and everybody listen. Until you meet again, have yourself a blessed one.
Welcome to the Urban Rhythm Revolution.
Listen,
Metro FM.
I'm the greatest of all time.
For all things urban,
I love the station.
It's where you want to be.